Hi, this is a presentation from HALTPennEast and the cost of the pipeline, talking about the PennEast Pipeline timelines around March 2017 going forward. I want to talk a little bit about where we're at, what's coming at us, and that maybe there is some light at the end of the tunnel after all. So this slide's going to show a little bit about what's happened already and where we're going to go with PennEast in the near future. So very quickly, back in 2014, the project was proposed, and we had pre-filing. Happened towards the end of the year, beginning of 2015. In September 2015, the FERC application, the formal application, was put in. Shortly after that, the PADEP Clean Water Act 401 permit was also submitted by PennEast. Fast forward into the middle of 2016, the draft environmental impact statement was put out by FERC. This is a document written by FERC and third-party contractors based on PennEast information. It's their evaluation of what the impact of PennEast will be to the environment and a brief analysis of its purpose and need. Now that was just a draft. Going into 2017, Pennsylvania DEP approved the Clean Water Act 401 permit, which is obviously disappointing and was done with very limited survey access, so we believe that was done on incomplete information. We'll get more into that. PennEast also applied to the Delaware River Basin Commission at the beginning of the year as well. That application has not been considered yet by DRBC, but will be in this year. So going forward into the future for this year, 2018, possibly even out to 2019, let's talk about what's coming up. So very soon, April 7th, we expect the final EIS to come in from FERC. This is their final determination and evaluation of the impact on the environment. To be clear, this is not a final decision by FERC. This is just their analysis and eval by the FERC staff. Later on, after this, there will be a final order, which is a legal document from FERC, where they will either approve or reject the application. So we expect that 30 to 90 days after the final EIS is dropped by FERC. The important thing, especially for landowners in the area, is that when the FERC final order comes out, that is when eminent domain applies. So at that point in time, assuming that FERC approves it, and we believe they will, that is when PennEast will have eminent domain power, and they will have federal eminent domain. So almost immediately after that, we believe that PennEast will go to the courts, ask for immediate access to everyone's property along the route who has denied survey access. They'll say we have eminent domain powers and we need immediate access for these surveys. To not grant us this access would be very harmful to us. The court will almost certainly give them access. So we expect this within days or weeks at best on the final order. So just to be clear, in terms of timing, this is likely going to be the middle of 2017, so June, July is the likely time frame for this to start happening. After this starts to happen, also as condemnation court proceedings will be taken, so everyone who has not made an agreement with PennEast for a right-of-way easement, PennEast will take them to condemnation court, and this is individually for every single landowner. They have to go separate court cases because every person's land is different. Also, at the same time, there'll be a number of conditions to the FERC final order. So when FERC order comes out, it'll be a certificate of public convenience and necessity, but it won't be final. It'll have probably 50 or 60 or possibly even more conditions that all have to be fulfilled before the pipeline can actually be built. So there's lots and lots of different conditions at different levels. I'll talk about a little bit of them, but it should be clear for everyone that they cannot start construction until all those conditions are fulfilled, with a small caveat, and I'll get to that. So PennEast is going to be rushing because of this tree cut deadline. So in basically the spring of the year is the cutoff time for when you can clear cut trees. Once you get into spring, which I believe is around April 1st sort of deadline, that's when migratory birds and other critters are nesting, and there's environmental laws that protect them from just cutting down their habitats. So they're going to rush to try to get all the FERC conditions done before this tree cut deadline in the spring of 2018. If they miss that, then they're going to be pushed back all the way into the late fall of the year, and they would lose a minimum of 6 months, possibly even more. If they do meet their deadlines, uh, PennEast expects that construction will start probably early summer. It'll go on for several months, and they are projecting in service of late 2018, probably the last quarter of the year. Now, this is sort of the FERC timeline and the PennEast point of view. It's not necessarily the accurate point of view, but this is what FERC and PennEast are saying. Now, things to take into consideration. One is the Delaware River Basin Commission. The application is in for that, but there have been no hearings yet. They will be set up. We have a lot of hope around this, and that originally the DRBC was going to just have their meetings held in conjunction with the FERC hearings, which would have been very bad for everyone involved opposed to the pipeline. They decided to sever those meetings and have their own, so they're doing their own evaluation, which is very hopeful. Also, the DRBC is basically a quasi-federal, not quite federal, but almost federal agency that is made up of basically the governors of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and a representative from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Right now, they are somewhat pro-pipeline in terms of the makeup of the governors there. However, we will have a new governor soon in New Jersey who will almost be more against fossil fuel development than our current administration is. And there is a lot of hope there. There's also the New Jersey DEP. There has been no application made yet for Clean Water Act filings by PennEast because New Jersey DEP told them to go away, that don't bother to file an application yet because you don't have enough information to actually make such a filing. So the idea is that PennEast will likely file after they get survey access based on eminent domain. So a bit of sort of circular reasoning there is they'll get their certificate from the FERC final order, and then they'll actually go out and do surveys they need for the DEP application. We have been assured by the DEP, both HALT and other groups, that DEP will be very strict with PennEast, that their standards are much, much higher than FERC standards are. That getting the Clean Water Act permit will not be easy for them. PennEast also has to get multiple permits from DEP, more so than in other states. There's not just the 401 water quality certificate, but also there's the 404 wetlands permitting as well that needs to be done. So there is a long haul for PennEast in terms of DEP. Obviously, they are also under the current administration somewhat pro-pipeline. We suspect the upcoming new governor would be probably somewhat less pro-pipeline and certainly less pro-PennEast for sure. So these are important considerations that PennEast and FERC don't really take into consideration. The New Jersey gubernatorial elections coming up, they will impact DEP, they will impact the DRBC. And to be clear here, we're not saying that these agencies will deny PennEast unfairly or just out of hand. We believe very strongly that the regulations as written today, if they were interpreted the proper way, that PennEast would not get a permit because they clearly will be severely impacting the environment in New Jersey in ways that can't be mitigated. The impact to our streams, the extreme steep slopes, the proposed route, all the impacts there can't be mitigated against it. And we believe a proper New Jersey DEP interpretation of the current laws would say this simply cannot be built in a safe way that will protect our water and protect our wetlands. And we believe just as firmly about the DRBC that if they look at the impacts of the Delaware River watershed, which is their brief, that they're going to say, now this project is completely unacceptable. On top of all this is FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So this is the commission that's actually in charge of the overall permitting of natural gas interstate pipelines like PennEast. And what's interesting is that they had a quorum going into the new presidential administration for reasons not quite clear. Instead of keeping the existing structure with Norman Bay as chairman, Cheryl LaFleur and Colette Honorable as commissioners, where they'd have two vacant seats that just happened through the course of business. The administration promoted LaFleur on top of or above Norman Bay. Hours later, Norman Bay actually quit. He resigned with just a week's notice. and left FERC with only 2 commissioners. And they need at least 3 to actually have a quorum to legally submit final orders and other important business before FERC. So this doesn't impact the final EIS that is done by FERC staff, and we expect it'll likely stay on schedule for April 7th. But FERC cannot commit to a final order, cannot issue a final order, and cannot give eminent domain power to PennEast. So Bay resigned the very end of January 2017. There have been 3 names that have been floated around in the press for possible nominees, but none of them have actually been formally announced. So it's been months now with no formal nomination. Past FERC commissioners have said it would likely take 1 or 2 months from the point of nomination to actually get someone in the seat at FERC and actually get going. And furthermore, that final orders are stacking up. If they nominated somebody today, they'll miss the last day of March 2017, that they would likely have 80 or more orders that would be in a backlog that they'd have to clear through. So even if they approve someone today, getting to that final order in June, July would be difficult. If the presidential administration does not nominate very soon, the final order will likely slip out very significantly. And again, there's sort of a domino effect here in that you have the DRBC application, NJDEP application, the tree cut deadline. All these things are working against PennEast, and that any delay at all in the FERC final order will have severe consequences to the project and to its deadlines. And on top of all this, keep in mind that PSE&G has pulled out of the project formally. They've sold their stake to Spectra Energy. So one of the original 6 owners has pulled out, and seems clearly saying we have no confidence that this is really going to happen. So that's sort of the business environment they're in, where one big company has already pulled out. There's a big question mark on whether this will ever get done. And even if eventually DEP or DRBC would approve, it may take so long that it just doesn't make economic sense. So lots of different positive things for PennEast opponents here. The question marks around DRBC, around NJDEP, the FERC process, and lack of quorum itself. These are all significant problems for PennEast. And they're going to have to find ways around all these things and somehow keep financing a pipeline that's taking longer and longer and longer to get approved. This lack of quorum in particular could be a very serious issue for them. They won't have eminent domain, they won't have survey access for PennEast, all very significant. And this is going to be a big issue. So that's sort of where we're at. This is what we're looking at. Thank you very much. Any questions, please email info@HALTPennEast.org, or you can email myself at thecostofthepipeline@gmail.com. Thanks.